The idea that Palpatine never fell to the dark side, but was rather imbued with it from birth, destined to bring balance to a galaxy long dominated by the Jedi, reframes his entire story as one of inevitability rather than that of corruption. From the moment of his birth, Palpatine exhibited traits of ambition, cunning, and an intrinsic connection to the dark side of the Force. These were not learned behaviors, but inherent qualities, suggesting that he was not seduced by the dark side as the Jedi may claim, but rather crafted by the dark side. The Force itself is a counterbalance to the millennia of Jedi dominance. The dark side was not a deviation for Palpatine, it was his nature, a role he was destined to fulfill in the cosmic cycle of balance. For thousands of years, the Jedi Order held sway over the galaxy, acting as self-appointed guardians of peace and balance. Yet their rigid adherence to the dogma and their suppression of emotions like passion and ambition created an imbalance in the Force. By denying the dark side, the Jedi perpetuated a lopsided ideology that prioritized stasis over true equilibrium. The Force, inherently seeking out that balance, may have manifested Palpatine as a corrective force. Unlike other Sith, who actively sought out the dark side, Palpatine's affinity for it seems almost instinctual, as if he were born with the singular purpose of restoring harmony by dismantling the Jedi's unchecked influence. His rise to power can thus be seen as the Force's way of addressing a galaxy stuck in stagnation. Was Palpatine an unwitting agent of balance? But what's interesting is that Palpatine never fell to the dark side. He was never seduced by it. Palpatine's actions, while undeniably destructive, can be interpreted as a necessary upheaval to reset the galaxy's power dynamic. It was the Jedi's failure to adapt, and their arrogance in believing that they alone could interpret the will of the Force that left them vulnerable to Palpatine's rise. As a Sith Lord, he dismantled their order, exposed their hubris, paving the way for the Force to be recalibrated. This cast Palpatine not as a villain corrupted by the dark side, but as an agent of the Force's will and chaos, wielding the destructive power of the dark side to break the Jedi's stranglehold. His rule brought about a profound shift in the galaxy, forcing both the Jedi and Sith to reckon with their failings, to create the conditions for a new era of understanding, the era of Luke. Ultimately, Palpatine's existence and rise align with the cyclical nature of the Force. In the grand scheme of things, the Force is not bound by the morality of the Jedi or Sith. It transcends such dichotomies. Palpatine's role was to disrupt the long-standing dominance of the light, creating chaos to rebuild in the balance. The Force does not operate in absolutes, and Palpatine's connection to the dark side from birth was not a flaw, but a part of a grand design. A manifestation of the will of the Force to restore equilibrium in a galaxy that was now stagnant under Jedi rule. This interpretation shifts Palpatine from a figure of moral failure to more of a cosmic inevitability, a necessary force of destruction paving the way for renewal. Before joining the Sith, Palpatine viewed both the Jedi and Sith with a blend of disdain and curiosity, shaped by his ambition and an innate sense of superiority. To Palpatine, the Jedi were hypocritical idealists who cloaked their limitations in a guise of virtue. He saw their commitment to peace and balance as a pure weakness, a refusal to embrace the full potential of the Force. To Palpatine, the Jedi represented an oppressive moral authority, one that sought to suppress individuality and passion in favor of their own doctrine. This disdain was only heightened by the Jedi's influence over the Republic. Palpatine considered them a decaying institution incapable of maintaining true order. But where things get really interesting is Palpatine's opinion on the Sith. Without understanding the Sith fully at this point, Palpatine rejected the Jedi's philosophy, believing that their reliance on altruism and restraint had made them blind to the reality of true power. As for the Sith though, Palpatine saw them as figures of intrigue, but also great arrogance. Those fragments of the historical accounts and whispers of forbidden lore, Palpatine was able to piece together ancient wars against the Jedi and the Sith's ruthless pursuit of power. While the boy was fascinated by their ambition and their willingness to seize control at all costs, he viewed the Sith as failures in their own right, conquerors undone by infighting and hubris. To Palpatine, the Sith seemed almost as flawed as the Jedi were, unable to escape their cycle of self-destruction. Yet, there was an undeniable allure in their philosophy, particularly the promise of power unrestricted by morality or restraint. In the Sith Order, Palpatine saw echoes of his own desires, a path where ambition was not only permitted, but was exalted. Palpatine's views on the Jedi and Sith, though, were ultimately pragmatic rather than purely ideological. He saw both groups as tools to be used or obstacles to be destroyed. Even before joining the Sith, Palpatine understood the value of playing both sides against one another. The Jedi's moral posturing could be exploited as easily as the Sith could be exploited for their lust for dominance. What Palpatine truly desired was control over the Force, over the galaxy, and over destiny itself. Both the Jedi and Sith were stepping stones to his greater vision of supremacy, a vision unbound by the limits of either philosophy. This ensured that when Darth Plagueis eventually approached him, Palpatine would not see the Sith Order as an allegiance to serve, but as a means to ascend, and to ultimately redefine power. The Force works in mysterious ways, and to Darth Plagueis, its machinations seemed to converge with purpose the day that he encountered the young Palpatine. The Sith Master, who had spent decades honing his own mastery in the dark side, saw in this prodigious youth a force of nature, as though the dark side itself had delivered him in the Sith plan. Plagueis marveled at Palpatine's potential, a sharp intellect, a boundless hunger for power, and the inherent darkness that rivaled the most legendary Sith of old. It was as if the Force had sculpted Palpatine into a weapon, finely tuned for the ambitions of the dark side. To Plagueis, there was no mere coincidence. This was a cosmic gift, a manifestation of the Rule of Two's inevitable destiny. He saw in Palpatine not just a servant, but a herald of the Sith's triumph. And yet, Plagueis, having reached the zenith of his confidence and power, believed him to be the culmination of the legacy of the Sith. Plagueis no longer believed that he needed a traditional Sith apprentice. His plans were progressing perfectly without one. The Rule of Two to him was a principle designed to concentrate power within the Sith line. It felt almost beneath him, a relic of lesser masters who had not transcended their mortality. Plagueis was on the verge of declaring himself the Sith of the Eternal, shattering the cycle of master and apprentice. And yet, even with his hubris, he could not ignore the allure of what the young Palpatine represented. An apprentice may no longer have been a necessity for Plagueis, but Palpatine, so cunning, so ruthless, so innately in tune with the dark side, was a luxury too exquisite to disregard. To Darth Plagueis, Palpatine was not a tool, but the most luxurious of all weapons, one of unparalleled destructiveness, guile, and ultimately, victory. The young aristocrat from Naboo was more than a potential apprentice. He was the embodiment of the Sith ideal, a conduit of destruction, of domination, one that would amplify the design of Darth Plagueis. The Sith Master did not see in Palpatine an equal or a threat, but a piece of the dark side's larger design, one that he could wield to perfect his vision of galactic conquest. To Plagueis, Palpatine was a sword. For all Darth Plagueis' power and foresight, he underestimated one thing: the Force. In its enigmatic way, Palpatine was not delivered as a gift to him, but as an agent of his own destruction. In nurturing and training Palpatine, he sowed the seeds for Plagueis' own demise. The idea that Palpatine never fell to the dark side, but was rather born a vessel of evil, reinforced by his innate ability to hide his presence, an ability that not only astounded Darth Plagueis, but also served as evidence of the Force's deliberate design. Unlike other Jedi or Sith who consciously had to learn this master, Palpatine knew it instinctually, as if it were a gift from the dark side. Plagueis noted this extraordinary talent and realized it allowed Palpatine to stand undetected amongst the most powerful of Jedi, something that no trained Sith Lord before him was able to achieve so flawlessly. This gift ensured that Palpatine could rise within the very systems overseen by the Jedi, making him the perfect instrument to dismantle the Order from within. Far from a learned skill, this innate ability speaks to Palpatine's unique role, a gift of the dark side. He never fell, he was simply born. This phenomenon becomes even more compelling when considering Palpatine's origins. By all accounts, his parents were ordinary people with no known Force sensitivity or any special bloodline whatsoever. His father, Kasinga, was dismissive and controlling, while his mother was passive and remained in the shadows. There is no indication that Palpatine inherited his connection to the Force from any lineage, making him somewhat of an anomaly, one of the few individuals seemingly chosen by the Force. Again, this has happened before, recently, with Anakin Skywalker, another figure born without any prestigious heritage. But in Palpatine's case, his emergence in the family devoid of the Force tradition highlights the Force's direct intention in creating him, a being uniquely equipped to challenge the Jedi, their perfect enemy. Palpatine's ability to mask his presence was crucial in his destiny, orchestrating galactic politics from the shadows. The Jedi, blinded by dogma and a sense of superiority, could not perceive the darkness that stood before them. This was not just the Jedi's failing, but the Force's will. Ultimately, Sidious's origins and abilities suggest a deliberate orchestration by the Force. Born to an unremarkable family, gifted with extraordinary talents, and imbued with a darkness that was not taught, but was instinctive. Palpatine's life was not a fall into corruption, but was a path set forth before him before his birth, set before him by the Force. His capacity to operate unnoticed among the Jedi was a tool for his ambition, and a necessity for the Force's design. Through Palpatine, the Force ensured that the Jedi's millennia of dominance would come to an end, paving the way for a new era where the light and the dark would once again contend for equilibrium. In this sense, Palpatine was not merely a Sith Lord or a villain. He was the embodiment of the Force's will, the dark side's will, the dark side's answer to the Jedi. Palpatine was a harbinger of a necessary destruction in a galaxy long overdue for change. But anyway, my friends, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on this look at Palpatine and how the man never fell to the dark side, but was rather cosmically selected by it for a larger role, intimately constructed by the Force, the dark side itself, to destroy the Jedi? If we look at it this way, Palpatine's already insane story only gets better. But as always, my friends, thank you so much for opening this dark holocron today, and as always, may the Force be with you.